It's the church versus the wall on the southern border. La Lomita Chapel is in a legal fight right now with President Trump to prevent the Trump administration from seizing their land to build the Trump wall. That legal process to seize that land is already underway, even though Congress refuses to authorize building the wall. Joining us now is NBC News correspondent Cal Perry, who has visited the church that is fighting the wall. Cal, what do we have to know?
Well, you have to know that the funding for this was an appropriations bill from last year for border protection. So here we go with the wall in Texas. Take a look at how Customs and Border Protection is advertising what they call RGV3. That's Rio Grande Valley Section number 3. There's a lot of wall going in, and it's going to start next month. How does the U.S. government actually seize land? Well, take a look. We've got the court documents. The U.S. government saying this church's land is going to be condemned and seized. But, Lawrence, there will be holes in this wall for all of the obvious reasons, and unless a judge steps in, this church will likely end up on the Mexico side of the border wall. Bells before dawn, praying before the light in La Lomita Chapel, built in 1899. The government wants to seize this frontier land for its wall. What does it mean to be a priest at a small historic chapel along the Rio Grande River?
It's sweet. It is sweet.
Does it feel like a frontier?
Well, it keeps us in touch with the frontier, I guess.
This tiny chapel is at the heart of the Trump administration's bid to potentially seize land, securing the border in this section of Texas. Now, when you look at that map on paper, it makes sense. Put the wall along the levee, right? The problem is, once that wall is in, everything south of the wall to the river, including La Lomita Chapel, becomes isolated. You must interact with migrants. You must see migrants come through here.
Sure, sure.
The church, the father, the community in the middle of a national debate.
And I looked around in the dark. Back in the back was a whole bunch of young fellows from Guatemala, just scared to death. Then they asked me if I could take them to town. I said, I would love to take you to town, but if we get caught, I'll be in more trouble than you will.
The Catholic Church believes they have a responsibility to protect migrants.
I had a fellow tell me a few years ago, he said, well, if that's what the church teaches, I don't want to be a Catholic. And I said, well, that is what the church teaches. If you were that poor guy trying to help his family survive, what do you think you'd be doing? If you had the balls, you'd be doing what he's doing.
With more apprehensions here in the Rio Grande Valley than anywhere else along the border, Customs and Border Protection is constantly on the lookout. Border Patrol helicopter went overhead, and that must be a unique position to be in with members of the congregation.
You can imagine there are people who live in fear already of the Border Patrol. Look at those guys. You think they're looking at us? It's only me.
And they're right here, right behind the church.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Border Patrol agents, along with local law enforcement, were here with President Trump on January the 10th. Like many of his trips to the border, it was quick. A photo op, a listening session. The sheriff of Hidalgo County had a blunt assessment of the visit.
He didn't meet with me. He hasn't met with any border sheriff, and I'm talking about from San Diego to Brownsville.
Like Father Roy, Sheriff Guerrera is tasked with protecting the church, a job made all the more complicated by the proposition of a wall.
When they need services from law enforcement, they need services from fire department, medical emergency. It just adds more time, and that's just not fair.
What do you make of the La Lomita Chapel?
It's very, very peaceful, and so to build a wall on that chapel, it's just not the right thing to do.
What's it like living here? I mean, people say we need a wall for safety.
I really don't think so. We lived here so many years, and it's nice and peaceful.
You hear the president say it's unsafe without a wall.
That's not true. I come here, I bring my grandchildren. You see a lot of people that come and walk their dogs. I've never had any fear that somebody's going to pop out and hurt me.
Is this a safe place to live here?
There are a lot of misconceptions, but aren't we ranked one of the safest cities? We are, so that's really nice.
And then they're going to have an enforcement zone, which would mean there'd be a big 150-foot caliche road where they could go up and down with the military vehicles. So the whole peaceful, serene silence of La Lomita, the spiritual atmosphere would be spoiled.
And so here is what the court will hear on February the 6th from lawyers for the church. Would not be minimally intrusive, but would in fact greatly intrude upon the defendant's property and First Amendment right of freedom of religion. Lawrence, I can hear it now. All those with business in front of the Supreme Court, the Honorable, the Supreme Court.
Yeah, this freedom of religion coming up against this attempt to build this wall. And Cal, it seems as though they are going forward with these attempts at eminent domain, even though they don't have actual funding to do the project.
Yeah, there's federal land on either side of this church. There's a butterfly sanctuary as well. They're going to try to put in as much of that wall as they can so that when they go in front of the court, they can argue eminent domain. One of the other interesting things happening, though, is as you talk to ranchers, and I know Senator Bennett hears this in Colorado, just like we hear it in Texas, a lot of people are uncomfortable with really ceding land on the other side of that wall. We had somebody say to us, you know, if the president gets this done, he'll be making parts of Texas, Mexico again.
And Cal, what's the timetable on this? When are we going to find out what the court thinks?
February the 6th, the court will rule on whether or not there can be a survey. That's not going to be challenged. The church actually wants that survey to happen. There are all kinds of things that could then derail the wall. We're looking at a lengthy court battle. But again, big sections of this wall in and around McAllen and places like Mission are going in next month.
Cal Perry, thank you for your invaluable reporting from the border, as usual. Really appreciate it. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.